Welcome to another episode of the COSIGN Conversations Podcast. Today in the studio, we have Soluto Uba, managing attorney and founder of the Uba Law Group. How are you doing today, brother?
Doing good, doing good. Happy to be here.
Man, I'm glad we could make this happen. I don't know if you remember, but the first time I met you was at Soiree Coffee Bar.
Yep.
You were doing an event there, and Soiree's my family. I do some stuff for them. So,
great people.
Yeah.
The Juneteenth event. Exactly.
So I was really just there to record from them, get some content. And I was listening, and I'm like, man, this dude is really knowledgeable. I need to tap in with him. I feel like our audience could really benefit from, having a conversation with you, man. So before we get started, let's get to know you a little more, right? First and foremost, why law? I feel like growing up, a lot of people are like, man, I want to be an attorney. And then you get to high school and college, you're like, I don't know about all this.
Yeah, it's interesting because so I'm Nigerian. So growing up in a Nigerian household, like even kind of back in the day, the main thing was just like a doctor or engineer. Like they really weren't even checking for a lawyer like that. Like nowadays, like it's all good. But when I told my parents I wanted to be a lawyer, they're like, I don't know. So I went to college and I was doing engineering my first year. And so first semester, almost failed half of my classes just because it was heavy science, heavy math, and I was a straight A student. Like I was good in school. I come to college, try to do an engineering thing. I knew I always wanted to be a lawyer in the back of my head. I was like, no, let's go ahead and switch it over. Had a government major, graduated from undergrad, just went to law school. Okay. And in my mind, being a lawyer was one thing. Law school is a whole nother situation. It ain't sexy. It's not glamorous. It's not. People ask me, I want to go to law school. What should I do to prep? I'm in college. Right. Tell them read a whole bunch of books that are long, boring, that you don't like, and just get practice writing. Because law school is just reading and writing. Gotcha. Like it's not what you see on TV. Yeah. So that's just. But I mean, I knew I wanted to do that. From Houston originally. Okay. Went to UT Austin for undergrad, and then I actually did my first year at Howard. Oh, wow. But yeah, I just want to get at Texas for a little bit. For sure. But ultimately, I knew I wanted to live in Texas, work in Texas. Came back, finished up at SMU, met my wife in undergrad. She's from Dallas, so we ended up in Dallas, and it makes sense. And so just started working here, and that's kind of how the legal career started before we hit some different directions that we went into. Gotcha.
So is law school something to like where you learn the information, you retain it, and then you don't kind of like circle back to it unless you need it? Like, do you have to remember all of this stuff?
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually just thinking about it the other day. Like law school, typically there's one exam. Okay. You learn the entire semester. They teach you a whole bunch of different concepts, and you learn in law school kind of the way that the law actually works. Okay. You read cases, and they teach you kind of the precedents and the legal principles from that. Okay. Because the law is just built off of cases. They're like actual statutes and like what they do in the legislature, but the way that the law actually works, pretty much people sue each other, and then the judge determines, okay, no, this is what this really means, this is what that really means, and then you have the functional law that goes off of that. And so that's what you practice doing in law school. You read a whole bunch of cases, the professor breaks it down, and then you learn and retain all that stuff, and they drop it on the exam, and you better do what you need to do.
So why business law specifically?
Yeah, okay, so that's an interesting story. I'm gonna try to condense it into a version that makes sense. But yeah, so I said, graduated from law school, came here, did my thing in Dallas, just started working at a law firm, like living a dream. Like in the back of my mind, when I was in school, I'm like, when I get that job at a law firm, I know I made it when I put my degrees on the wall. I have a law degree, undergrad, all this stuff. And so I did that. But after a few years, I was like, yeah, this whole lawyer thing is cool, whatever, but I don't know if I can see myself, for the next 30 years working for somebody else, building up somebody else's dynasty. Right. And so it kind of came to a head, I tell the story all the time, when my wife and I were pregnant with our first son. Okay. Mainly my wife was the pregnant one. And so in my mind, I kept on having the same thought, like, if I don't get out now, I'm going to be trapped. I had the same thought for like a month straight. If I don't get out, I'm going to be trapped. Baby on the way, family, responsibilities, all that good stuff. And it's easy to try to do your own thing when it's just you or, just you and wifey. It's just the two of y'all. Y'all can bounce back. You can make something work. You're going to be fine. Right. Kids and family starts to come around. It's like, you feel that need to, hey, I got to have something solid. I really can't experiment. So
sure.
I quit the law back in 2017.
Okay.
I thought I was done. I retired from my law firm. I knew I wanted something that would give me more financial freedom, time freedom, the entrepreneurial dream. So I actually got into real estate. I started doing real estate investing, fix and flipping and wholesaling, just the whole real estate deal.
Right.
The thing is, like, even after you retire, when you're the lawyer in the community, people still hit you up for the legal stuff.
For sure.
And so, like, people were talking to me about, immigration or, criminal law or whatever. None of the stuff that I didn't have any specialty in, and I didn't care about it. The only thing I really cared about was just business and entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And so after like a couple of years, like, I'd be quietly forming businesses for people on the side. I'm like, let me just go ahead and formalize this thing. And then we launched the Uba Law Group back in 2019 to focus on business formation. And then over the years, we've added trademark and tax strategy with it too.
Okay, that's nice. There's something you said, since we're talking about entrepreneurs, that you sent me. You said you equipping dreamers to become entrepreneurs and equipping entrepreneurs to become CEOs.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Can you break that down for us, though?
Yeah. It's interesting because that really kind of ties in with my own journey. So when I left the law firm, it was a weird deal because really since I was like 12, like I was always like the kid that liked to argue with everybody, which is what attracted me to be the lawyer. And so, it's a big undertaking. You accomplish the dream. You're in the office. You got the degrees on the wall, and you just, man, I don't know if this is it.
Right.
But part of me that was also part of me from the jump is I've always also had that entrepreneurial bug. Like I remember when I was 8 going to a local library in Houston, and man, it was messed up. I'd go to the printer, I'd print up Dragon Ball Z pictures, and I'd sell them at school. I'd just sell the pictures at school and make a nice bit of money. I remember in high school, I was the kid for a little bit. I couldn't do it for too long, but for a little bit, bought the candy, sold the lollipops at school, just making. It was in me. That entrepreneurial bug was in me.
Always been there.
Then you shift over to we're grown, we're adults, and you start looking at what's going to give you that freedom, what's going to give you that ability to be at the soccer games and the karate tournaments and just do what you want to do. Right. And so it kind of shifted into that for entrepreneurship. But as I was growing in my journey, even in real estate, I learned so much from real estate. Still do some real estate deals now, but can't do it as much as I used to.
Got you.
But just learning about life and business from real estate. It's one thing to be an entrepreneur, but if you don't add structure, if you don't have systems in place, you're going to go from working for somebody else a 9 to 5 to working for yourself, 24/7. And when you're your own boss, your boss doesn't let you stop working ever. And like that's the entrepreneur's curse. So one of the things that we see a lot is what is it? I mean, and you get into entrepreneurship because people want that freedom, financial freedom, time freedom, whatever. But if you don't set yourself up the right way, you're just going to be a slave to your own business. Yep. So when I talk about transitioning from an entrepreneur to a CEO, there's a whole lot that goes into that, because what we like to see with our clients is, hey, somebody's got to get out the mud and do the groundwork. Right. But once you kind of build those systems in place, fire yourself as quickly as possible at the right time, but fire yourself out of those positions, bring people in, bring team members or bring technology to automate stuff in, and then have a business ideally that does not need you to function. So that's when you're being a CEO, and that's when you can have the high level conversations or build relationships, form connections, rainmaking, whatever you want to call it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it's sad, especially with creatives, with people who love what they do. They sometimes kind of lock themselves and trap themselves into their passion, where you have to perform, otherwise, the bills ain't getting paid. Right. And so that's kind of that big shift from entrepreneurship to CEO.
Nah, you explained that amazingly. But so for people who want to get out of being entrepreneurs and become CEOs and get to that next level, a lot of times they're on the ground floor doing the work. When do you recommend somebody coming to see you for help?
Yeah. So generally, from the jump, and for a few different reasons. And so what's kind of dope here is now we shift into the legal side.
Okay.
So depending on what you do, there are some professions that don't require a business entity. So one of the primary things that we do is we form business entities, primarily LLCs. We do some nonprofits, some corporations. But the whole reason that you form an LLC is to protect your personal assets from the business. So if something happens in the business, I personally won't get sued. Example I like to use, if I start Soluto's lemonade stand and I don't have a business, then I'm just a sole proprietorship.
Right.
I sell you lemonade and then you get sick, you have, food poisoning or whatever, you have $100,000 in hospital bills, you sue my business, my lemonade stand. If I don't have a business entity, me and the lemonade stand are the same thing.
Right.
So you're gonna sue me personally. So in order to protect yourself from liability, you create the business entity. But sometimes some people have businesses that really aren't going to be subject to liability. Like we've had some clients that are authors, and they wrote a book. So the reason why you create a business as an author is not to protect. No one's going to sue you for reading the book. Right. But there are other reasons that you can use the business. So one of the things I help people understand first is there's a difference between having a business and having a business entity. You can have a business entity. You can have a business with no business entity.
Right.
And then on the flip side, sometimes people form a business entity and they ain't got no business.
No business.
And so the first thing that I say is, hey, what is the goal? Typically, most people will need a business entity.
Right.
But what are you trying to do? We're primarily going to use a business entity to protect your assets, like we just talked about, but then also to legitimize your business.
Gotcha.
It's the year 2022. Ain't nobody trying to work with, with just Soluto Uba. You're trying to form partnerships with all these different people. And that's the thing. Like, social media has connected the whole world, and there are folks that are missing out on legit opportunities because their stuff isn't put together. So a Meta is not going to want to do a collaboration with you because you don't look legitimate.
Exactly.
And so for those reasons, that's another main way that people will form LLCs. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of different things to get into it, but you just want to make sure that you're set up the right way to accomplish your goals.
Got you. So when should people set up Incs or corporations opposed to LLC? Because I've seen some companies are, Incs, .Incs instead of LLC.
Yeah.
And I want to know what's the benefit or why should they do that over an LLC?
Yeah. And so this is a good question. It's a question I get all the time. So typically when I'll get the short answer first. Most people need an LLC. Most people don't need a corporation.
Right.
There are some circumstances where a corporation is appropriate, but for most entrepreneurs, people who look at stuff on Instagram or YouTube or whatever and want to form a business, they'll be best served by an LLC.
Okay.
I'll kind of break down the two primary differences between a corporation and an LLC.
Perfect.
So we'll talk about legal protection, then we'll talk about taxes, because those are the two main areas.
Okay.
Legal protection, corporations, LLCs is pretty much the same thing.
Okay.
If I have a corporation and somebody sues the corporation, they can't come after my personal assets.
Okay.
If I have an LLC and somebody sues the LLC, they can't come after my personal assets.
Gotcha.
And this, of course, is assuming that you're maintaining everything the right way, and so on and so forth. But they both protect your personal assets from any of the debts or obligations of the business. Now, a corporation is the older entity. Corporations have been around for a while now. So when it comes to maintaining the corporation the right way, there's a few more steps. It's a little bit more involved to maintain a corporation.
Okay.
LLCs are a little bit more flexible. Just kind of historically, LLCs happen because you'd have businesses, typically small business owners, family-owned business, that said, hey, we want the protection of the corporation, but we don't have the huge structures and all the employees to be jumping through all these hoops and doing all these things when it's just me and my wife, or it's just me and my brother, just me. And so the LLC kind of came as a function of the law to give you that same protection, but give you the flexibility where you don't have to start a company meeting and have it seconded and have whole minutes just to open a bank account.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of the difference there. So when it comes to legal protection, corporation and LLC are the same thing, but taxes are different.
Okay.
And so taxes, the big thing people need to understand is with the corporations are subject to what's called double taxation.
You said they are?
They are.
Okay.
They are subject. LLCs are not subject to double taxation. So what double taxation means is that, let's say we have a business, I have a corporation, and the corporation earns $100,000 in profit.
Okay.
The corporation has to pay taxes on that $100K, at the corporate level, which is currently 21%.
Okay.
And then in order for me to get paid, Soluto, the owner, I have to cut myself a paycheck from the corporation. I can't just pull money out of it. There are certain ways to get paid. I can't make $100,000 in profit from the corporation and pull out all 100K.
Right.
IRS is going to have something to say about that.
Okay.
So I have to cut myself a paycheck to get paid. So in this example, make $100K in profit, the corporation got taxed at the corporate rate. When I cut myself a paycheck, I also get taxed at my personal rate. So that money gets taxed twice. That's what we call double taxation.
Okay.
With an LLC, when it comes to taxes, the IRS sees you and the LLC as the same thing.
Okay.
So if you make $100,000 in profit from the LLC, they're going to tax you on $100,000 in your personal rate. So how things happen there is different. Now there are a few more elaborate ways that we can talk about S corporations and how all this stuff works. But typically, when people are setting up a corporation, when I have clients that told me, "Yeah, I set up my own corporation," I was like, "Okay, were you doing it for some of these strategic reasons?" Like, "Oh no, I just thought that was the business entity."
Right.
So I was like, "Okay, then you're gonna have a couple hoops to jump through."
Got you.
Yeah, so that's what I'll typically tell folks.
Okay, so I've been hearing about people having LLCs, but then filing their taxes as an S corp.
Yeah.
What's the benefits of that? Because why would you want to do that?
For sure. So this is one of the harsh realities that people realize when you jump in entrepreneurship. So people are used to paying taxes. You work a 9 to 5. You get your paycheck. Social Security, Medicare. Those are taxes typically taken out of it. It's called payroll tax or FICA tax.
Right.
And so what people don't realize is that the amount that they take out of your check for taxes, that's half of the amount that's owed. Your employer pays the other half.
Okay.
When you're self-employed, you're both the employee and the employer, so you pay all of that.
Gotcha.
So in addition to our regular federal taxes, there's that self-employment tax. Self-employment tax is 15.3% up to a certain amount, around 150,000-ish, but there are other rules that we get into. But self-employment tax is generally 15.3%. So that means in that same example that we just used, and that's on top of whatever your personal tax rate is. So in that example that we just used, I have an LLC, we make $100,000 in profit. Let's just say my personal tax rate is 25%.
Okay.
So I have to pay 25% of $100,000.
Okay.
That's $25,000. As a self-employed person, as an entrepreneur, on top of that, I also have to pay that 15% self-employment tax. So that's $15,000 on top of the $25,000. So you thought you made six figures, you're really making 60K.
60K.
So that's kind of a big deal. This is where the S Corp comes into play.
Okay.
The S Corp allows you to put yourself on salary in your own business, and now you pay yourself a salary.
Okay.
And so the self-employment tax will only come out of that salary instead of coming out of the whole total profit. So in the same example, your business makes $100K, and you give yourself a salary of $50,000.
Okay.
When it comes to your regular federal taxes, you still got to pay that. The feds they're gonna get their money.
They want that.
You pay that $25K in federal taxes, but when it comes to self-employment tax, you only have to pay from your salary $50,000 as opposed to paying from taxes from the whole $100K. So in this example, before with no S corp, self-employment tax is 15%. You had to pay $15,000 with the S corp. You give yourself a salary of $50K. Now your self-employment tax dropped from $15,000 to $7,500.
Gotcha.
You just put $7,500 back into your pocket.
Gotcha. So
or
in
for
that
business
case,
owners, you just reinvested it back into the business.
So in that case, it makes more sense.
Yeah.
In that case, okay, I see how it's working.
Indeed, but another note of that is some people jump the gun with the S corp. They see the IG post or whatever, and they form an S corp from the jump. Right. I ask you how much money you made last year. You tell me $11,000. I'm like, you just played yourself. Like, they're like, you have to make a certain amount of money before it even makes sense.
So in your opinion, what would that number be like? Just to give people like a ballpark.
Yeah, so
to make sense.
So that number is typically around $40,000 in profit. That's what I've seen. A lot of CPAs that I respect, they also kind of bid that number because just kind of from a technical standpoint, the S corp isn't like a get out of taxes free card.
Right.
There's still different things you have to do. With the S corp, you have to put yourself on salary, which means you got to have bookkeeping, you got to have payroll, you got to do monthly tax deposits, you got to do quarterly tax reports to IRS, you got to do a special type of tax return every single year, which is different. All those things, cost money.
Right.
You got to have your CPA take care of all that stuff. So, don't have $2,000 worth of CPA fees, and then the S corp only saved you $1,000.
Yeah,
don't make sense.
Nah.
And so that's how that goes.
That's cool. So I've seen to where when people start an LLC and then later on they bring on investors, and sometimes they end up having to switch, I guess, their formation. Why is that?
Yeah. So there are a few reasons that happens, and there are a few ways that people bring on investors.
Okay.
So typically, or sometimes people just kind of bring on an investor. They'll own part of the business. So I own 100% of my company. You know, we did as much as we can do. We need a little bit more money to kind of go to the next level. This person, they're gonna invest $100K. Now they're 50% owner. Okay. So in that instance, you know, they'll kind of change the structure of the business. It can still remain an LLC or a corporation or whatever they have, and now they're just owners. In other instances, you know, say we had a client that was preparing to do a real estate deal. They're looking to fund money for the real estate deal. So they're looking for that instance called limited partner, just someone to just bring money. You're not really going to have control. You're going to get, you know, your return on your investment, but we're still going to just kind of run the day-to-day operations. Legally, and just because of tax reasons, there are different structures that are required. And then also to kind of protect people in certain situations, there are ways that you can join into ownership of the business that'll protect you. But typically, and you know, you see that limited partner situation with like real estate and some business deals. But typically, when you have people just, hey, you know, my friend has $20K, he wants to be a part of it, he's going to invest in business. You can still maintain your original structure doing that. You know, you just, it's smart to make sure that everything is documented and on paper, and just, you know, doing it the right way.
So for those who are looking to go the venture capital route, right? That's something different. Would they still do the same thing?
Yeah. So now let's talk about corporations.
Okay.
So typically, I tell people you don't need a corporation. The caveat will be is if you're trying to do a venture capital type deal. So it's typically businesses that are startups, traditionally in technology. They'll form as a corporation because it's easier for investors to invest money into to own shares of the corporation. That's a form that you can do it with an LLC, but they're more familiar with the corporation, and it's just an easier structure. It's more attractive to them. And so that corporation model makes it very easy to fund. There are some trade-offs because there are some ways that you can also lose control of the business. But, you know, at first, you know, 40% of $1 million is better than 100% of zero.
Of course.
So that's kind of the structure that works there. So people can fund the business and invest in a way that they're comfortable with, and then you can, you know, keep that business moving.
That makes sense. Okay, now that's nice. So like I said earlier, a lot of our audience are creative entrepreneurs, and with that, people have a lot of ideas, right? So let's go into this. I'm gonna use myself as an example, and then we can kind of use that as a case study. So I have a media company, right? COSIGN. I call it COSIGN Magazine. So I have a magazine. Then I also do like marketing and advertising for clients. So it's like COSIGN Media. Then I have this loft that I use for rentals and other stuff. I call it COSIGN Loft. It's not an entity yet, but that's 3 different things right there. So yeah, let's just say those 3. And then I want to create a network. So with that network, basically it is I'll be doing podcasts under people. So that's kind of like 4 things under like the same kind of realm. So like let's say I have 2 LLCs, all right? I have COSIGN Media and COSIGN Enterprises. In my mind, I'm like, maybe I should start a holding company and then put like some of these other ones underneath it. Cause like, let's say somebody wants to help with COSIGN Loft. That way I don't have to give them a part of like the COSIGN Magazine. When is it a good time to do a holding company? When is it a good time to have multiple LLCs, or should people do just DBAs?
Exactly. So that's a great question, because a lot of people, like you said, are thinking in terms of that. And there's not necessarily a wrong answer. It really just depends kind of what are your goals and kind of what's the strategy behind it. So what I tell folks is the primary purpose of an LLC is to protect you from liability. So we'll have folks that say, hey, I have this company, I have this other company. Should I make a second LLC, or can I form it together? My general response there is, if you have businesses that are complementary, there's not really that big of an issue putting them in the same LLC. You have the media company, and then you have a marketing company that might go with it. Those are somewhat complementary business. Of course, you have to look at every scenario and evaluate. But yeah, they're going to be doing the same thing. They're going to have the same type of activities. They're also going to have the same type of risk. So you don't necessarily need to have it separate. However, then we start to ask questions. Okay, what are you thinking when it comes to investment? Are someone looking to come come on? Are you looking to have maybe employees?
Right.
And so if you are looking to potentially have investors that help in some areas, then it would be advantageous to have your business ownership separated, so they can just own that, and then there's the rest of the pie that you have for yourself. So when we think through that, it can become a multifaceted deal.
Okay.
There are ways to kind of streamline the process. One of the benefits of a holding company is just like you got the one entity that owns all the little subsidiary companies.
Gotcha.
And then like even from like a tax purpose, everything is just flows through to that one entity, one tax. It's easier to do it that way. However, just because it's convenient doesn't mean that it makes the most sense.
Gotcha.
One of the things that I tell clients is, hey, like you've got a rental property here, then you got your primary business that you do over here, then you started a nonprofit over, like you're just gonna have a little bit of inconvenient, I call it administrative process. Just become just okay with that, just accept it, you know, because people try to, I'm trying to do one thing and streamline, and you just cause other problems for yourself.
Gotcha.
So there's not necessarily one good answer, it just really depends on what you're doing. However, only caveat here is, when it comes to DBAs, make sure that you understand what you're DBAing. Okay. So a DBA, for those who don't know, stands for doing business as. It's just like a trade name. It's an assumed name. A DBA is not a legal entity. It doesn't give you any protection. I can't. You won't believe how many times I have this conversation. Oh, I almost got sued, but it's my DBA that got sued.
That's you.
No, you got sued. And so just know what you're doing it for. But if you have two companies on the same LLC, just kind of like you said, DBA works great there. Just understand what the DBA is.
Okay, that makes sense. And I also saw in these, you know, with the popularity of podcasts, you have so many different gurus, right? I heard somebody say that you shouldn't get an LLC in your name. What are your thoughts on that?
You should not get an LLC in your name.
Yeah, like
interesting.
So like you shouldn't have like a Soluto Uba LLC.
Oh, okay, bet. I rock with all that. I thought that was conversation going way left. I generally agree with that. And so that idea is what we talk about layers. So obviously when you set up an LLC, you're looking for protection. Right. You're gonna have legal liability protection. So if somebody sues me, they can't get at my personal assets because my LLC is there. Right. But another type of protection that people don't understand and is just as important is privacy protection. So you want to bake in as many layers of privacy into your business, because just like they can't sue you if you have an LLC, it's also hard to sue you if they can't find you. Right. They don't understand what assets you have. So I have clients that kind of like you said, Soluto Uba, Uba Enterprises LLC. How about we just be more coy? You know you own the business. Right. The world doesn't need to know you own the business. And I say this a lot, especially with my real estate clients, because they'll have 5, 6, 7, 8 properties. And I'm like, if you keep on naming these LLCs things that sound like you, what's going to happen is, unfortunately, this is the world we live in today. Somebody sees that, this person owes 8 properties. Oh, guess what? I slipped and fell on the property, and let me come after what you own. And so that's the world that we live in. So like being very, very vague and anonymous, I tell people, White Cloud LLC. Like that's
for sure.
Because you know who the owner is. The world doesn't need to. And then other things, there are other strategies that we use from there. But yeah, privacy is very powerful.
Gotcha. You made a point about the real estate. So a lot of people invest in real estate too. Yeah. Do you tell your clients like each property should be its own entity?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So now we talk about, again, the purpose of the LLC, to protect the assets. So it's to protect your personal assets, but then also LLCs can protect each house, each real estate property from each other. Right. So if you have 10 properties and they're all owned by one LLC, somebody slips and falls on property one, they can sue you and come after all 10 of the properties. Gotcha. So you have to protect them from each other. The legal term is risk segregation. You want to separate the risk from everything else. Okay. So kind of the number that I like to use is about $300,000 in equity. Okay. Just from like a practical standpoint, like it's annoying if you have to build an LLC for each property. Each property is only worth $50K or whatever. And now, in the year 2022, the market has gone up. And so a lot of the properties are starting to be worth more. Like even in the DFW area, you're going to be pushing that, that 200K to whatever type range quickly. So 1 or 2 practically in an LLC just makes sense. But then that's kind of where it comes to with the, hey, just be ready for some administrative, whatever. And they're different things that people can do. Some people use serious LLCs, some people use other structures, and each strategy has its pros and cons. But just know, in general, to protect your stuff, there's gonna be challenges. It's gonna be administrative. Just make peace with it.
Got you. As they should, like coming into this, people should know what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah.
So definitely do the research first. Let's get to the creatives, IP, intellectual property. All right.
Sure.
I feel like this is something that a lot of people overlook. Like, man, they create and they're ready to get it out and they just put it out.
Put it out there.
just put it out there.
No protection.
So you specialize in trademarks.
Yep.
For those who don't know, first, please give us a difference between trademark and copyright.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So we specialize in trademark. We do a little bit of copyright, but primarily trademark. And a lawyer years ago made a great analogy, so I'm just straight steal it.
Okay.
Copyrights protect content, trademarks protect branding. Copyrights protect content, trademarks protect branding. So a copyright is the owner's right to reproduce the work that they create. So I can copyright a book, a song, a movie, a course, a curriculum. You can copyright the things that you write. The legal term is put into original works of authorship put into a tangible medium. Okay. So something that I came up with and I have to put it into something, whether it's typing it on Google Docs or filming it or recording it, I have to be able to show that, hey, I put it into some sort of tangible form. That's a copyright. So if I write a book, you can't take my book and sell it because I own the right to copy it. I'm the only person that can reproduce it. Now, one of the things that's tricky to understand about intellectual property is that, say with copyright, as soon as I write the book, as soon as I draft it up in Google Docs, it's there. There's documents. There's a record that I made it.
Right.
So I technically have the copyright, but unless I register that copyright, I don't have the ability to enforce it.
Gotcha.
So if somebody tried to rip me off, I'd have to quickly go to the copyright office, register that, and then be able to pursue it. It just makes it more complicated. So that's the big idea with copyright. Now, trademarks, on the other hand, trademarks protect branding. So a trademark is what I call a source identifier. So if anybody sees a trademark, they understand who the source of that item or that service is. So example I like to say is if you're walking in the mall and you see a shirt that says Nike, automatically you know a lot about that product just off of the branding.
Right. If
you see a Nike shirt, you probably know about the price, the quality, what type of celebrities endorse it, what type of just off of the name.
Right.
And so that's extremely important and powerful in today's market. You can just see a word and automatically associate the value with that thing. So people they own it, they own it, and then they protect it fiercely.
Gotcha.
So what I tell folks is, really, you don't own your name, you don't own your brand, you don't own anything if it's not trademarked. Kind of similar with copyrights, there are some kind of qualities that you can possess, but you don't have the ability to enforce anything without a trademark. So even if you have the LLC name, website, social media, without a trademark, you do not own your brand. And so that's kind of the big thing. And then the main things that people trademarks are obviously brand name, slogan, logos. There are some instances where you can trademark colors, like red bottoms, Louboutins. They have that color trademark. There's some instances that you can trademark smells. It's a few things out there that's a little bit extra, but mainly the stuff that you see: the name, the brand, the logo, slogan. That's what you want to trademark.
Okay, I got questions from those. Okay,
yeah.
Real quick from copyright. So let's say photographers, right?
Yep.
They copyright their photos. It's out there. Can they sue you even if you give credit?
Yeah. So this is the whole this content does not belong to me. Yeah. So there's something called statutory damages. So it just means by statute, by law, if someone violates, they infringe upon your trademark, you can come after them. So a lot of times when people disclaim, and you'll see on a YouTube video, or hey, this song does not belong to me, that's like you go into a bank and you have somebody else's Gucci bag, and hey, this Gucci bag does not belong to me, but I'm holding it. You doing that disclaimer doesn't do anything. If it don't belong to you, it don't belong to you. Gotcha. So the remedy for that is getting a license of some sort, and kind of getting something that belongs to you. Now, I mean, so that's law. From a practical standpoint, is it going to happen with the majority of people? No. But if you are that person that it happens to, I don't know what to tell you. But so that copyright disclaimer that people say, nah, don't really do nothing, and don't work like you think it worked. But that's the thing that happens on a regular basis.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's do trademarks, because trademarks is a lot of layers to it.
Yeah.
Right. So for common names, like, so you basically can't, like Apple, like even like they got Apple computers, you can't trademark Apple, right?
So with Apple, it would probably harder. There probably are some ways that you could trademark it. So that's a great question. There's something in trademarks called classes. It's called international classes. So that means there are different categories of things that you can trademark. So another example I like to use is a Delta. There's Delta Airways, but there's also Delta Faucets. And so the whole purpose of categorizing things is that, a trademark is a source identifier. So if you see the name, they want you to understand who the source behind the name is.
Gotcha.
So if you have things in different categories and the categories are different enough, like with the Delta example, they know if you see Delta Faucets, you're not going to think the airplane company makes the faucets.
Right.
So those categories are different enough that they can have the same name. Now, I can't come up here trying to make a computer and call it Apple. No, it's the same category, not going to fly. Yeah. And now, kind of practically, Apple's so big, they're expanding so many different markets that it would be pretty tricky to have Apple. There's probably an example, and I think there actually might be another example with Apple, but it has to be so distinguished, so remote, so whatever that there could be no confusion. Because that's the big thing when it comes to trademark. This legal term is a likelihood of confusion. So if the trademark office believes that there's going to be a likelihood of confusion, they're going to shut that down. So that's kind of like the big distinction that people look for with trademarks. And really, what kind of trips people up is it doesn't even have to be a one-to-one thing. I don't need to have a thing called Apple to have that be shut down. If I have a name that they even think is similar, you can spell it different. It can sound the same. It could be possessive. It could be plural. It does not have to be the exact same thing. It can just be in the family of ideas that might maybe be considered the same thing, and they'll shut that down. So that's where people get caught up because I checked the trademark website. My name isn't here. And this is why I tell people, you got to work with an attorney.
Right.
Otherwise, you're just going to be paying that money later and work with an attorney again. Because what people don't understand, if you try to trademark something, you go to a trademark website to see if the name is available. Technology has kind of spoiled us because we think everything is Google.
Right.
If you go to a trademark website, and in the example I like to use is, let's say you're starting a coffee shop and you want to call it Starbucks with 3 S's at the end. You can type in Starbucks with 3 S's at the end, and the trademark website will tell you nobody has that trademark. Right. But obviously, just common sense, it's not going to work. So people will put in whatever their name is. They see, no trademark for this, and they think they're in the clear. What lawyers do, any trademark lawyer worth his salt, for our firm, we have a 3-step process. The first step is we run a comprehensive search report that checks the entire federal database, states, LLCs, all types of stuff to see where all is this name being used. Because you have in every type of iteration, stuff that you don't even think is relevant can be very relevant. So that's why we always recommend going to an attorney, because it's a long process.
Gotcha.
It's a way long process.
What about variations? Or not even variations. So now companies don't even have to be in media, but companies are creating their own platforms, right? So let's say a coffee shop. Let's say they do, let's say they put in their name, it's Coffee at Starbucks podcast. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's where they're basically interviewing people at Starbucks. Yep. Can they be sued or see some damages for using a company's name within their series name?
Yeah. Okay. Because the big idea is, it's a brand identifier. So if you use Coffee at Starbucks podcast, people will assume this is associated with Starbucks. Gotcha. And now all the decades and the millions and billions of dollars that Starbucks has taken establishing their brand, you just get to suck that in for free.
Gotcha.
There's a monetary value to that. And so even that's kind of the same thing that's happening with the Coachella, Afrochella situation. And we'll have to see how that plays out. But Coachella is nope, this is our brand. We've established that name. People hear Chella, they hear music festival, they think this. There's a value to that. People, you can't just take that name and run with it. The trademark is the brand identifier. And so when we talk about, hey, whatever you're starting, This is the year 2022. This is social media age. The entire world is connected.
Right.
So you owning that name and you owning that brand is powerful. So you need to understand and work with somebody that's going to tell you off the rip. I would have told the people in Afrochella, like, this ain't gonna fly. Like, if it was just like a little festival that happened, it was a one-off thing, cool, no big deal. It's built into something that's big, and so now they're going to have to be at a dividing point. And if they can't make something work, things are going to have to shift. And so so the name is so important. That IP is crazy important.
No, those are some great points. So to tie it all in, man, I kind of want to ask you this, right? So let's do this the correct way. So somebody's ready to start a business. They've done the research, got the plans, ideas, everything. What are the correct steps? What I mean by that is, when should they form? When should they, see an attorney, CPA, vice versa? Like, what would like your steps be for somebody ready to start a business and they come to you first? And
that's dope. So we have a free resource on our website called the Power Team Playbook. Okay. And it's kind of for situations like this. And so having worked with entrepreneurs pretty much in every space, we work with 10-figure businesses, 8-figure businesses, 10 million plus, to businesses just started.
Right.
And people from all those walks of life have similar questions. Now, they're in different phases, but they have similar fundamental needs. So the first thing that we want to talk about is, how are we structuring? How is it structured, and for what reason are things set up that way? So the first thing we typically want to do is, we want to get you an entity. We want to make sure that you're established the right way. We want to make sure that you don't have personal liability. And then even how we do that, it gets confusing because people see LLCs all the time. You can see a website, you can see whatever. You go to Secretary of State's office, and what people don't understand is that anybody can go online and click, and form a website and form an LLC and get a piece of paper. But the question is, do you have a paper LLC or do you have a performing LLC? Because, knock on wood, God forbid that you get sued, but that piece of paper from the state is not going to protect you. You need a performing LLC to protect you. And so that's why, people in this kind of a different conversation, but it's relevant. People say, hey, what's the difference between you and this website? Or why do y'all charge the rates that you do? When you work with me, I'm going to tell you the things that you need to know and the things that you don't even know you need to know. I'm stopping problems that don't happen because you're working with a professional. Gotcha. So we're licensed in Texas. We primarily work with Texas businesses. There are issues that we've prevented for clients because we know how to draft things into their documents, and we do that for our clients, and they get that expertise. Gotcha. There's a whole division that we started in our company called the LLC Rehab, because folks will kind of do something on their own and it'll get screwy, and we had to start that whole division because it was a problem that happened a lot. The first thing that I would say off the jump is just having the mindset that you need to invest in the right people. You need to invest in your business by investing in experts. For sure. So the first thing that we do is we get the LLC established. We create a performing LLC, and that's not going to bore you with the legalese, but the two main pillars there are having your internal legal documents and having your corporate formalities. So we draft the LLC in a certain way that gives you maximum protections. And then even what's dope about Texas is that Texas has laws on the books that don't exist in the majority of states. So there are extra protections that our clients can have that the majority of business owners can't. And then we have your corporate formalities. That's the second pillar. Those are the procedures, protocols that you do on a year-end basis that show that you have a legitimate business. And so we have different resources that teach our clients how to do that. So that's the LLC side. So you have the business entity formed, and you're not going to get sued personally. No. What you need next, most likely, is a CPA. You're going to need an accountant. You're going to need somebody there to make sure that the money isn't funny and that you have things in that right order. And even apart from money being funny, like, one of the things that I've learned the hard way through business is you have to have a plan for everything. Money is not a boss. Money is a worker. So you have to have an assignment for all of your money. Otherwise, your money is just going to find its own way into doing all sorts of things. And before you know it, it's gone. So when you have that CPA, you have that accountant that's working with you and kind of giving you a game plan of where that is, that helps you make educated steps forward. You're probably also going to want to work with a financial planner. One of the things that happens, and especially in our community, we're having conversations starting to build into that generational wealth. But a lot of times people are losing out on opportunities because they're not working with experts. We work with experts in our firm. We have kind of like a family office deal where we have financial planners that have all types of different strategies that they can help you to save even more money, protect the family.
Gotcha.
Rainy day. I tell people off the jump, this isn't legal related, but life insurance.
Yeah.
Like all these different things they need to have in place, because as the business owner, you have to have your personal house structured properly too. And so when I talked about the Power Team Playbook a minute ago, but this is a free resource that has steps for people in every aspect of the business. Okay. Whether you just started or whether you're making $10 million, here's a legal strategy, here's a tax strategy, here's an organizational strategy, here are different things that you need to be doing to advance yourself. And this is a free resource that you can get.
Free 99.
Free 99 from going on the website. So that's kind of the first thing. The next thing I also advise people do is look at your intellectual property situation. Do you have now? There's some names, there's some businesses you don't need to trademark. You'll be all right. Yeah. And so if you want to pay me your money, I'll take your money. I'll trademark it for you. But there's some things that it's just not necessary. Okay. But there are other things, especially. I can't talk about that because that client's going to get the situation right. Okay. But they had a name that was like, you heard it, I thought it was a franchise. Right. And it was a business that they just built themselves. I'm like, yo, you need to trademark this now, continue to build this thing up. In 3-4 years, you might be able to be entirely passive and just sell the business or license out the name to different franchises across the country. And what's dope about creatives is I hear this stuff all the time. I see it all the time. People have gold on their hands that they're just throwing into the trash because they don't understand how to protect it. So doing that, creating that IP that's protected, that you own, you make sure that you own your name, own your business, is so crucial, because on the other side of that, rebranding is hard. We've seen clients invest tens of thousands of dollars into a business, physical building, only to realize that, hey, you don't own this name, I own this name. You got to rebrand this thing now, or and then have to break the whole thing down. So ownership is crucial. And then the last thing that I would say, we didn't really get to talk about it, but your biggest expenses in your business will be taxes. So understand that the tax game. Okay. We have a service called the Tax Strategy VIP Day, and I learned a lot of it practically just from my time in real estate. Gotcha. But business owners, being a business owner is the key. That's the key hack. Gotcha. That's the plug right there, because the government favors business owners. So as a business owner, you're going to have different types of options available to you to save money on taxes that a non-business owner just doesn't have. So understanding that, getting with an accountant, getting with someone who's a tax planner, because not all accountants do that, and that's perfectly fine. But making sure that you get with a tax strategist, a tax planner, somebody that can create a comprehensive game plan. So we do that for our clients, and we advise them to make sure they're working with accountants, CPAs that do the same.
Gotcha. So I was going to ask, do y'all work hand in hand, since you do tax strategy and then y'all work with the CPA as well? Indeed.
And so I'm glad you asked that, because so I call myself a tax strategist. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a tax accountant. In many instances, there's a segment of law called tax law. We don't really do that because that's a very technical, specific type of law. But what we do is break down what the law says and how these strategies work for business owners. Okay. And so, kind of like you said, we work hand in hand with accountants. We have accountants that we refer out to clients, because at the end of the day, like, we want you as a business owner to have the best company, the best relationship with all the aspects of your company. So you're going to need to have an accountant at some point. For sure. You're going to need to, because even kind of we have like a little competitive professional rivalry. There's some stuff that your accountant will want to happen that I'm going to tell you no, because that'll set you up for a lawsuit. And and there's some things that I want to do that your accountant's going to kind of want to maneuver. So we have clients that we have the attorney and the CPA, and even some financial planners, all a part of the same circle, that we're communicating with each other so the client gets the maximum output. Gotcha. I've had conversations that with the accountant, and just kind of discuss different ideas, and then we present to hey, what did you think about boom, boom, boom? And they have the best result, because you have people on your team that are thinking about you, thinking how to advance the company. You have people on your power team. Right. So there's a million things that we can go to, but that's a strong foundation to make sure that you're doing well.
No, that's important. I had a conversation about, like, during the pandemic, how people not having their correct paperwork and everything set up with the right team lost out on so much opportunity.
So PPP I hope will never happen again. I hope the conditions are never such that it'll never happen again. But for those who who took advantage of it legitimately, because the feds are coming for people.
They coming
left and right. But those who had the stuff set up properly, had your employees properly, you had all this stuff. It's free, but this will never happen again. Never. And then when people talk about the PPP, but another thing that people aren't aware of is the ERC, the Employee Retention Credit. And so, the beauty of the ERC is that it's still available, I believe, for a few years now. But what the Employee Retention Credit is it was a way that the government wanted to have to encourage business owners to not lay off their workers. Because when the pandemic hit, unemployment was flooded. You couldn't. It was wild. So the government was like, "Hey, hold on to your workers. We'll pay you a credit worth a portion of their salary if you don't, send them to unemployment." So there are lots of legit businesses that did it the right way that were able to get an additional check on the back end that's refundable. And I won't go too deep into it, but that means if you got a refundable check from the IRS for $10,000 and you owed $8,000 in taxes, that credit would cover your $8,000 and they send you a refund for $2,000 back.
Oh wow!
And so that if you see IRS and refundable credit, that's gold. Okay. And that doesn't happen anytime. It happened during the pandemic, and a lot of people weren't in place to take advantage of it because they weren't set up legitimately.
Gotcha.
And so, you see all the time, but the winner's gonna win, and folks, they gonna do what they do.
Facts. So I got a quick question about taxes. So you hear about people like Donald Trump and Amazon who pay little to nothing or nothing in taxes, but are making millions, billions of dollars, right? How does that happen at the 6-figure level?
Indeed.
Right.
Yeah, so the funny thing is, it's actually easier at the 6-figure level in some ways. So what people don't understand is that real estate is the ultimate hack. So we have different clients. I was talking about our tax strategy session. We ultimately talk about, hey, you have to own real estate. Okay. And the reason for that is because real estate has so many different things, but there's a natural built-in concept in real estate called depreciation. So over time, your property loses value. Just, stuff will break down, and you build a house in the year 2000, the wood has kind of rotted to a certain extent, and so it has a loss in value, and you can write that off. Every single year, you can write off a portion of the depreciation on your real estate. You can write that off of your taxes. So an example I like to use is, say you have a rental property and you make $2,000, you charge rent for $2,000, you make $500 profit every single year. So $500, every single month. $500 a month over the course of 12 months is $6,000. Now, depending on how much that property is worth, even a reasonably middle house income property, you might get a $10,000 depreciation write-off. That means on taxes, it's going to be minus $10,000. Okay. So when I tell people, think about it, you bought a house. Hopefully, you used a responsible bank loan at a good interest rate. You bought a house, and it's increasing in value. You have somebody paying down the rent. You have somebody paying down the mortgage. They're putting $500 of profit into your pocket every month, cash flow. You made $6,000 of profit, passive. Didn't have to really do a lot. You have a setup. Right. $6,000 in profit at the end of the year, and on paper, because of depreciation, you're showing a loss. So you have $10,000 of depreciation. On paper, you're showing a $4,000 loss. So this asset that's increasing your wealth and increasing your portfolio is showing a net loss on taxes. This is how, the Trumps and the Amazons and all these big companies, this is how they pay so little, because they take advantage of these different types of depreciations and these different strategies. And so what people don't understand is, I'm going to say that one for the paid consultations, but there are strategies where you can use the real estate losses and it can decrease your regular earned income from your job. So we have folks that are, have an engineer making $110K, and he has like $50,000 worth of real estate losses. So on taxes, he only makes $60K. Okay. And so and not only does that save you the money, but what people don't really get is that drops you down major tax brackets. Right. So you're making $110K, you're probably in the 24 to 26% tax bracket. You drop it down to 60, you might be in the 12% tax bracket. Okay. That changes the game.
I know you're not a CPA, but would you know how you can do it to where you're claiming a loss, but you still look profitable. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah.
Because people want to be able to secure capital,
sure.
so it's like, how can I write all this off?
It's funny. I've been having this conversation a lot too. So the answer is no.
Okay.
So there's two basic modes that I tell people that you need to kind of operate in. Institutional mode and non-institutional mode.
Okay.
So institution means like you're going to talk to a bank, you're going to want to secure funds from investors, all these different institutions that you're going to need to tap into, or, and I have clients that, hey, we're going to buy a house, so we want to show profit.
Right.
They buy the house, they have, all the stuff that they need a loan for, they get that secured, they write off the whole,
Gotcha.
the whole existence for the next whatever year. So you can do that, but you have to kind of know where you are. That's why financial planners, CPAs are important, because they're going to have the, hey, what's the 1 year, 2 year, 5 year plan? If you say, hey, we're looking to raise money for the company, we're looking to take COSIGN to X and X level, yeah, you're going to have to hold back on all of those deductions, because, just from a practical standpoint, if you're looking for investors and you pull out the balance sheet, we made $5K this past year. Knowing that you made a whole lot more, you just rolled everything off. Yeah. That's great for you, but what investor is going to look at that?
Yeah, they're not.
And so that's kind of the double-edged sword. And it's interesting because there was a viral social media moment that kind of talked about paying taxes and saving money on taxes and all that jazz. And I'm Mr. Big Save Money on Taxes, but there are milestones that you're going to reach in your business where taxes are just a reality.
Okay.
You want to kind of to offset as much as possible, but the purpose of offsetting taxes is to increase your wealth. If there are other strategies that would increase your wealth that involve you paying taxes to whatever degree, then you have to think about the end game. Being as cheap on taxes as possible is not the end game. Saving money, increasing wealth is the end game. So there are some things that will require you to take forms of income that have greater taxes. There's some things that will require you to just not deduct off certain years. There's some things that are just going to require you to be more strategic with it and not just go to save money, save money, save money. Because we're not just only looking to save money, we're looking to establish wealth. If saving money is a vehicle to establish wealth, we want to do that. If showing more income is another vehicle to establishing wealth, then we want to go that way. But that's kind of my long drawn out answer. But short answer is, look, like if you're looking for money from other people, they need to see income. Right. Income comes with taxes. So.
Got you. So to wrap this all up, man, my last question is basically for you to talk to the audience, man, and just tell them, from your perspective as, an attorney, as an entrepreneur yourself, right? And everything you learned through working with your clients, what is something like one piece of tangible advice or one gem that you would give to them to help them along their business journey to help to go into building wealth, right? Because there's a lot of things that comprise of, but if you had to say like this is what I would tell somebody coming up, what would that be?
Man, this is gonna sound so. I'll give two pieces. One piece is gonna be a little bit hard to swallow. The first piece I think you've heard before, but it's true. Okay. So mindset. When I quit my job in 2017 and got into real estate, I was digging podcasts, YouTube videos, everything. And so I'd just listen and learn from people from all types of industries. But no matter what they did, typically the first thing that they would talk about is your mindset.
Right.
Because if your mind isn't correct, you cannot succeed or you cannot ascend to the level that you're looking to do in anything. So make sure that your mindset, and particularly having an abundance mindset. Okay. As an entrepreneur, you're out here kind of creating, I call it the wild, wild west, like we're the cowboys and the cowgirls just building things out here in the jungle, so to speak. Right. But you're out here kind of building and creating a service or product that's going to benefit the world, benefit people. You have to believe that there is a space for you, that what God has for you is going to happen, and you have to kind of put the work behind that. So making sure that your mindset is proper and is aligned is crucial. Okay. So that's the acceptable one. That's popular piece of advice. Okay. Other popular piece of advice is pay the money. Oh. So pay the money. Like, being cheap will save you time, but it will save you money, but cost you more time. That time will ultimately cost you more money. So I've had so many advances in my business, professionally, in entrepreneurship, even in our law firm, where we pay. If people saw what we invest in experts, and we're not huge by any stretch of the imagination, we're still growing, trying to get that to where we're trying to be. But we invest in ourselves and in our business. And kind of a subset of that is I now feel more confident than ever kind of charging the rates that we charge for clients, because I know what it looks like to invest 5 figures plus into your business to grow to that next level. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes people are trying to take the elevator to success. There is no elevator. It's it's not a hoax. It's not a scam. People aren't here in the back hiding kind of like that secret. There's no secret. You have to invest, and you have to ascend, and oftentimes that includes investing in people that have the information, have the knowledge, and have spilt their own blood to kind of give you the strategies that work. So I see it all the time, and like even now in our business, we even kind of strategically we separate ourselves from people that are looking to haggle or looking for, money is everything, because I don't want that headache.
Right.
Like I don't want sorts of clients that don't respect what we're doing is going to try to penny.
Right, makes sense.
Your business is important. Like one of the things that I think a lot is a verse from the book of Proverbs. It says, "A godly man leaves an inheritance to his children's children." So that means I have a son. My son is 5. Okay. My son's kids are supposed to have a life that is set up because of what I'm doing now.
Right.
So when you think about legacy and lineage and all that stuff, when you think about how important it is, why would I not invest the most I can into my business to make sure that it's set up? Now, don't be crazy. Don't just hop on any guru or somebody that says they're an expert. If you look into somebody and they're legit and they have the ability to take you to where you want to go, like do it, because not only is it true that you got to pay people what they're worth, but you paying that person helps you because it makes you more invested in your success. It's just like in real estate. You have to have skin in the game. You have to have investment into your own business. And kind of lastly, why I think that's so crucial is because like when you're looking at the landscape in 2022 and beyond, ownership is crucial. Ownership is important. Even at our firm, we have a campaign that we started called "Ownership is the New Black," and so that goes from real estate, intellectual property, stocks and investment, as well as actual businesses. If you don't own anything, then you can't be a change agent. You can't be a stakeholder. At most, you'll only be a spectator. So when it comes to creating that legacy, when it comes to creating the type of life that you envision, that financial freedom, all that stuff, you got to own something. If you're going to own something, you need to invest in it. If you're going to invest in it, you're going to have to pay people what they're worth. Obviously, do your research, do your homework, make sure you're paying the right people, but invest in experts and take your business to that next level.
Mindset, invest, and pay people. And I'll be remiss if I didn't ask this before we get out of there. Yeah. We talked about you having a son that's 5. I have a daughter that's 15. I just want to know, like, for people who have businesses that want to pass it down, what's the proper way to do that before we get out of here?
Yeah, that's a conversation in itself. Okay, let's talk through two quick ideas. Okay, perfect. So I'm not a estate planning attorney, but there are some fundamentals. Right. First of all, life insurance. For sure. Apart from setting anything up, get life insurance.
Definitely.
Yo, you want to talk about generational wealth.
Definitely.
So, anyway.
Life insurance.
Get life insurance. Second one, at least have a will set up. Okay. So if you die without a will, then you're subject to what's called intestacy laws. Intestacy is just kind of like the default rules by each state about what happens to you when you pass away. So if you die without a will, the government kind of decides what things happens and you can't kind of control things. Even if you die with a will, you still have to take your will and do what's called probating the will. That's when you go to probate court. You have to take it to the judge and be like, hey, judge, this is what grandma and grandpa said that they wanted to happen to this stuff. It still takes time, and the court still gets a chunk of that money. The ideal situation, in my opinion, to transfer stuff is to set up a trust. If you set up a trust is kind of a relationship that lays out what you want to happen with your assets. So not only is it important that you set up the trust, you also need to fund the trust. So if you have assets, you need to switch the ownership of the assets from yourself into the name of the trust. Okay. So that when you die, you're actually not the owner of the assets. The trust owns the assets, and there's someone that's already set up that can execute the trust, that can do what needs to be done, and they own it, and then they can kind of administer your affairs. So the big picture that I would say for folks is to have a trust set up, have the assets transferred into the name of the trust, and then even what's dope about trust is you can control that from the grave. Like you can have a rule book set up of what can happen in the trust. If you have responsible kids, at 20, 22, they graduate from college, here's their money. You got irresponsible kids, they have to meet this, and this standard to get the money, or they only get a little bit, or, this one, you get all those different things, you can control it. But having a trust, that's a strong strategy to transfer that legacy.
And an attorney sets up the trust, right?
Indeed. you better have an attorney set up the trust.
Got you. Okay, and the last thing is, so do you not recommend that people put their businesses or add their kids to their businesses?
Yeah, so there are pros and cons. What I would recommend is talk with an attorney, because there's specific things that can happen there, but there are also some downsides to it. And then talk to an attorney, also talk with an accountant, because those will have competing views, but that'll give you kind of the biggest picture.
Gotcha, man. You share so many gems, man. Like, after listening to this, people need to make sure they get set up, and then they make sure they set up a consultation.
Yeah, ubalawgroup.com, ubalawgroup.com, and just Uba Law Group on social media and everything. Hit me up. I talk back. Really easy to do.
Definitely, please do. I DM'd him, and this is how we made it happen today. I'll be seeing him after the awards, because I will co-sign the statement. I paid some money to save time, but I had to do it over and over again. So I probably paid more than what I would have did if I was doing it professional the first time. So so I lost 2 LLCs because I didn't know about franchise taxes. So they forfeited that. There's a lot we can go on to, but I would definitely say, man, definitely like you said, mindset, invest, and pay people. So I'll be doing that. I'll be taking that information, that advice myself. This is a COSIGN Conversations Podcast. We have Soluto Uba, managing attorney and founder of the Uba Law Group. Make sure y'all follow. Make sure you also subscribe, like, comment, and share this podcast if you got any gems. And, man, thank you for your time, brother.
Appreciate you.
Much love.